Stan has another guest, this time by phone. Stan?
Thanks, Ann. We're with Kokomo Mayor Greg Goodnight. Mr. Mayor, thanks for being with us.
Thank you very much, Stan.
And we do want to talk quickly about the automotive industry, and we've just been talking about unemployment, and Kokomo and Howard County, as well as surrounding counties like Miami and Tipton County, have not gotten good news with regard to unemployment figures. And a lot of that has to do with the Chrysler plants in your city, does it not?
Absolutely. Of course, Indiana has historically a strong manufacturing base, and a lot of that in the north central part of the state is tied to the automotive industry, and that's we've been successful here in the past, but unfortunately, because of the downturn, it's affecting us dramatically here.
Now, we mentioned that Bloomington got some good news this week. Kokomo got some good news potentially as well, in that Chrysler and Fiat are partnering together to produce something like 7 new vehicles. How will you try and get your city to be part of making parts for those new cars?
Well, that was good news for Kokomo. Gave us a little bit of a shot in the arm. We're very proud of the fact that the Harbor reports, which gauge the efficiency in automotive plants throughout North America, our Chrysler transmission plants always come in at #1 as the most efficient transmission plants in the country, and well, in the entire North America. And so we believe that with the partnership with Fiat, that will hopefully stabilize Chrysler's situation and give them a few new models and product lines that will make sure that Kokomo is a part of their long-term plan.
President Obama, during his campaign, said that the auto industry needed to retool and go more towards green automobiles. Is there retooling that Kokomo's auto plants have to do to keep up with that push from the presidential administration?
Well, I agree with President Obama. We, in Kokomo, we have the Chrysler plant that employs just under 5,000 people. We also, our second largest employer is Delphi Automotive, and they're close to 3,000 employees here. And part of their long-term plan, they've already done a good job right before the big downturn in the lending for automobiles and such, and the banking. They were coming up with make sure that they're a part of the future in the automotive industry. A lot of their their parts that would help with the green economy and the green automotive industry, and part of that bridge loan was to get them through the next year or two till the economy is a little more stable, and I think they'll be a part of the future as well.
Mr. Mayor, thanks so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Stan, always a pleasure.
Back to you in the studio, Ann.
All right, thanks a lot, Stan. I have Mitch Fraser again from the Indiana Economic Development Center, and Dr. Jerry Conover again from the Indiana Business Research Center. First of all, Jerry, why don't we start with you? Many people are talking about the fact that it took a lot more for the big 3 automakers to get their bailout in comparison to the other entities before that, the banks, that kind of thing. What do you say to that?
I suspect, well, that perception is certainly there and valid, because we didn't see the return visit that the automakers made in other industries happening. As a matter of fact, they didn't necessarily have to do a whole lot going to Washington to ask for that money in the first place. And the money to the financial sector, which was early in the bailout part of the process, didn't really require a whole lot of plan from the financial companies as to how they were going to deploy those funds, whereas the auto industry had to do a lot more. I think the reason why the automakers had to do more was probably because the public felt somewhat taken advantage of by the financial sector, that they got all this money and they were just sitting on it and not giving it out in loans and not helping people out of their mortgages, and they didn't have to show any plan for what they were going to do with that money, so they didn't want to see that happen again when the auto industry came up to bat.
Well, Mitch, tell me, I mean, what do you think about the bailout when it comes to its effect on Indiana?
Well, I think as you look at any case where you have government spending to create jobs, history would tell you that it's never a good plan. What we have to do, that aside, what we have to do, the governor has to do, the General Assembly has to do, is really get together, figure out what the best approach for us is, how we can be the quickest and the best at pulling together our team to capture as many of those federal dollars as we can, to put people back to work, to build the infrastructure on top of the unmatched infrastructure we already have, how to best use those dollars for a long-term economic return rather than just a one-time blip.
Well, obviously one of the debates is between Do you cut spending or do you increase spending and cut taxes? I mean, you say that spending all of this money by the government isn't necessarily the best idea, but even if you decide to cut spending, then people are going to potentially lose jobs from that because you're cutting some sort of business that affects these people. So, I mean, where's the balance here? I mean, how do you find the balance between spending government money and giving up people's jobs on the cutting side?
I don't think it's that simple of an equation. I think you have to look at, in the case of the current bailout package, it's approximately $850 billion, roughly 275 billion of those in tax credits or tax cuts, the rest being government spending. Many of those government spending requirements require governments to spend money within 7 days or 10 days or 120 days of bill passage. As someone who is growing up in this economy and will certainly have a family in this economy, and my grandkids will be paying for the money that's being doled out today. And I think it's absolutely imperative that we do everything we can to ensure that money is spent in the most appropriate manner. Tax cuts give more people discretionary spending immediately. Undoubtedly, there are opportunities for investing with some spending, but I don't think the balance is necessarily on the right path now, but that's not for us to decide. What's for us to decide at this point, how to be the quickest, how to be the best positioned once that bill does pass for us to capture as most money as possible.
All right, well, Jerry, last question, your outlook, your perspective. I mean, how long are we going to be in this situation? How long is this recession, or whatever you want to call it, is going to last? How long is it going to last?
Well, it's a constantly moving target, and unfortunately that makes it tough to predict, but if you look at the predictions of economists all over the country, they range from late this year, we might see a turnaround, maybe this coming fall, that unemployment would bottom out and employment would start to grow again. Others are a little less sanguine, thinking early to middle part of next year, and I've even seen some who are hedging toward the end of next year or even into 2011. So the estimates are all over the map, but the consensus seems to be that we're going to have this recession still sliding downhill at least through all of this year most likely, and probably into next year for a while. The key thing to note too is that when employment starts to finally decrease and more jobs are getting built again, which we could be under less than a year away from that happening, it's going to take a lot longer than that for it to get back to where we were before this recession began. Probably several years before we're back at a level that we were enjoying just a couple of years ago.
And the effects will last for a long, long time. So, all right, thank you so much for being on the show. Thanks so much to our WTIU viewers and WFIU listeners for joining us tonight for In Focus. Next month, our topic is the arts. We will be discussing why the arts are important to communities in South Central Indiana, how certain aspects of the arts are helping in the classroom, and how drastic funding cuts in this area will affect our cities and towns. I'd like to thank WFIU News Director Stan Jastrzebski. Also, thanks, Stan, for standing by in the radio booth.
Thank you, Ann.
Well, you can send us questions by going to infocus@indiana.edu, and also to see portions of this show, you can go to newsmatters.org. Have a great night.
Production support for In Focus is provided by Hoosiers for Higher Education, a statewide organization of alumni and friends of Indiana University, dedicated to raising the awareness of the importance of higher education for Indiana's citizens and the state's future. More information at 800-937-3448. Hoosier Energy, providing electricity for Central and Southern Indiana electric cooperatives and their member customers. Information at hepn.com. And by viewers like you. Thank you.